Chaos. Woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, chilling with coffee mugs, me and coffee chugs, talking education all across the nation, pushing boundaries, thinking innovation. Chaos.
Hello, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Living on the Edge of Chaos podcast. Oh man, I'm juiced, and I'm already past my pot of coffee from the morning. This is usually where I wear down, but man, I am truly beyond honored to have this conversation with the guest today. I recently came across his work and his book, and even though his work's been out for a while, I find the ethers of and the portals of life have brought it together. And man, it's knocked me off my rocker in all the good ways with just thinking about so much. So I'm so excited for our guest today. And I know any of you listening in, this is going to be a phenomenal conversation as we think layers to education, but also I think to our own personal and professional lives, whatever it is we do and whatever we're thinking, kind of going through. The work that he does definitely resonates, and I'm really excited for this. So Brant, welcome to the show. I could spend probably this whole entire podcast going through all your accolades and recognitions and the incredible speaking and just all the things that you do. But let's dive into this here and just start off with, I'll put it over to you. Who are you? What do you do? And what in the world do you got going on?
Wow.
Those are heavy questions. Yeah.
Those are heavy questions. That's right. So my name is Brant Menswar. I am a keynote speaker, author / personal development coach. And, I come out of the music business. I spent 20 years in music business touring with my band, Big Kettle Drum. Pause for applause. Okay. Thank you. And, sort of left that stage for a different one, just sort of moving into the conference speaker space. And in 2020, I wrote this book called Black Sheep, which is all about discovering your non-negotiable values. And here we are. I think it's been translated into 8 or 9 languages already. And still, I just did my first Bulgarian book club, which was amazing in all the ways that you think it could be. And we just signed a deal to translate it into Greek, and we've got Arabic and Korean and like so many different languages. And so the message has been carried far and wide. And I'm just excited that people still are finding the book and doing the work. And that's why we're here today having this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to get into my journey and some of the things that hit and resonated that I think will connect with others. But before we do that, something I've been asking a lot of my guests is, I come from a nerdy comic book superhero folklore. Spider-Man is my jam in terms of I like the movies too, but I'm talking like give me the comics. So I like to ask guests this, what's kind of your origin story? You talked a little bit about that, just a little bit there, a little bit, and maybe coupled with that, what do you think is your superpower to kind of mix with that? I mean, you've got a lot of skill sets. I mean, from the outside learning in, but as you start to think about those elements, and those questions probably align very much well with the content of Black Sheep here, as I'm kind of thinking out loud here. But how'd you get here? And then also, what's your superpower? And you can frame that answer however you like.
For me, I think my superpower is connection. Having deep, meaningful connection, even sort of quickly out of the gate. Not a lot of surface type stuff. Like we dive pretty deep in just the nature of my work and the nature of connecting to people, whether that was on stage in front of 10,000 people at a music festival or it's in front of 1,000 people at a conference somewhere. The idea though is connection leading people towards hope, I think, is my real superpower, right? I have lived enough lifetimes over the last 20 years to experience the good, bad, and ugly. And, it was something for me, just to be open and honest, lost my oldest son to cancer and COVID in 21. And so, when you go through something like that, you realize the power and the need for hope. And so that's really my purpose, right? Is aligning all of my values for the sake of bringing people hope. And so
Yeah.
that's what I spend my days doing, whether it's on stage or on a podcast or on a television show, whatever it might be. What I hope I'm delivering is hope that there is something more for everybody out there if they're willing to do the work.
Mm. Man, yeah. I mean, and yeah, condolences to all that. I know as I was
Yeah,
prepping for this show, I've come across that, and I know at the time of when Black Sheep came out, that
yeah,
wasn't the case, but there's some history to that in terms of all that
there is.
comes through,
Yeah,
and you talk about hope, you talk about community, and as you're talking, wasn't something I was thinking about, but I am now, as
yes.
you work through that, still work through that. I think, I mean, I've got 3 children of my own, have
Mhm.
not gone through anything like that, but I also know things never quite go away, right? Life experiences, they come and go. There's an ebb and
Yeah.
flow to stuff. You think about community and hope, you know, how did that work within your network? And the reason I'm asking this is I think it's where I'm trying to go with this is you are seen as a person that delivers this idea for others to find something to take away, right? And I think sometimes when you're on the stage, people forget we need that the very same message. We need the same things in our life. How did you surround yourself? And it's some of the ideas of your book too, right? With those people to work through that and still work through that.
Well, in the book, I talk about your inner circle, right? And
Yeah,
who you
yeah.
allow in your inner circle. Um, it's really based on the teachings of John Wooden, from years ago, the legendary UCLA
Mhm.
basketball coach. For
Yeah.
those that are not familiar with his work, you don't know what you're missing out. If you are,
True.
are familiar with the, sort of the success triangle, it comes from him. And so, one of the things he talks about is you're never going to outperform your inner circle. And so that should make you think long and hard about who you let in your inner circle. And so, the book talks about if they're not at your level or above, they really can't be in the inner circle. They can be in your life, but they can't be in your inner circle. And your inner circle is where you spend and devote the most time.
Yeah.
Um, that's a difficult conversation, right? Sometimes you've got people in your inner circle that are family, and you devote an enormous amount of time to them, but they're not at your level or above. And when I say at your level, I don't mean financially successful or anything like that. I mean they desire something out of life like you desire something out of life, and they're willing to work to get it. Um, and it might be they have a phenomenal business, or it might be that they have a phenomenal relationship at home with their kids or their spouse or whatever that looks like, and it's something you aspire to. Um, you know, my wife has drilled it into my head that I am someone who has a very empathetic heart, and so I say yes to a lot of things that maybe I shouldn't. But the idea is for me, that I desire that impact in people's lives, and so that's what drives me, right? But she always tells me this. She says, "Look, rather than just saying yes, your first response whenever you want to try to help somebody is you get to that next rung on the ladder and you immediately reach down and try to pull somebody up with you, which is great, and she loves that about me. But she goes, why don't you just pause and make sure that your footing is sure and spend a little time there first before you reach down, because if you do that and you get yourself comfortable and build a strong foundation on that next rung, then when you go to reach down to pull somebody up, you're not just pulling up one, you're going to pull up a group with you. And so that perspective shift has allowed me to sort of focus a little bit more on what I say yes to, and focus more on a higher level of impact. It's not just pulling one person up, it's pulling an entire group of people up. But you've got to be at a level of success to do that. And if you say yes to too many things before you're ready, you're never going to reach that level of success because it requires an enormous amount of focus, that we get distracted from because we're already trying to help people when we should be trying to help ourselves, if that makes
Mm,
sense.
yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for saying yes to this podcast, first and foremost.
Of
But yeah,
course.
that's so spot on. I mean, as you were talking about that, I was visualizing, even if you don't have your footing secure, it's almost like you're in mud. I'm thinking that I'm in Iowa and it's been 40 below, but now it's been a little warm, so snow's melting. It's
Yeah.
and I'm like, you can lose your footing, you can slip, and next thing you know, we could all be down a couple rungs of the ladder of no one's intention at all, but it could happen. And as you say that, some context to like how I came across your book, 3, 4 years later is this year, uh, last year has been a grind. I won't use this as a therapy session by any means, but I started this year doing the 75 hard challenge. And long story
Ooh,
short, I don't know if you're familiar with that or
I
not, but
am. I am.
yeah. And
Good on
so
you.
someone suggested reading Black Sheep. And so I was like, okay, like all I ever read is either like comics, which doesn't cut for 75 hard, or I read for work. And I'm like, I need something that's and I used to do that all the time. And so your book hit at such an opportune time. And I'm thinking about your inner circle. And something that I've been grappling with this last week is this idea of like let go. And I've been trying to figure out maybe people who, whether they were directly in my inner circle or maybe kind of
Mhm.
hovered on the outside, I've been trying to like let some of that go without being like a jerk.
Yeah.
Um, and the inner circle is like I have to like really dig deep to figure out, who do I want to give that invite to? Which has been some real work. And so one of the key phrases that I've resonated and I have bold and I have it like all over my work spot is one of two things that just kind of knocked my socks off. It's so obvious, but we need it. It was you posted in your book. Real change requires real work, and I think it's like something we all know. I think we also take for granted, and we think like change is just gonna happen. Um, so I know it like the phrase itself makes sense, but I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on there because I think as I was reading that, I'm like, yeah, and I was doing the 75 hard challenge going, yeah, this does require work. Like this is really hard
Yeah.
not to eat candy and
Yeah.
not to have my bag of
Yeah.
popcorn at night. And
Yeah.
but if I want to do what's right for me, and it's hard, but it's better
Yeah.
you build those habits. So
Yeah.
just as I know you wrote that, but as you've
Yeah.
lived that, and you're going through it, and you're
Yeah.
talking, talk some more about that.
If it were easy, Aaron, everybody would do it, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
so what we know is that less than 1% of us definitively tell you what their 5 non-negotiable values are, how they use them every day, and the impact that they drive.
Yeah.
So I'm a highly competitive person, right? So before music, I was an athlete, and
Yeah.
um, not everybody got a trophy because you don't get a trophy unless you won, right? And so
Yeah.
that was always the drive. And so um, it's a different sort of type of work when you've got to be vulnerable. You got to have some what we call bone crushingly honest conversations with yourself,
Right.
because here's the interesting thing that I've discovered over the last few years of working with. I mean, we've done literally tens of thousands of people now that have gone through the program. Um, what I discover is that many people don't like themselves, right?
Mm,
And the
mm,
more successful they are, the more they don't like themselves, which is a
yeah.
very weird sort of dichotomy. But it's that imposter syndrome that sneaks in that everybody talks about these days. But my question is always this: how do you know the person you don't like is actually you? If you don't do the work, then you don't know who you are.
Yeah.
You know a reflection of what everybody else says you are, but you don't know you. And so when you do this work, you start to discover what your non-negotiables are, what your black sheep are, and you start letting go of other people's sheep. You stop having to feed so many other people's sheep that you can focus on your own, right? And when your sheep get fed, when those values get fed and invested into every single day, um, they pay dividends in a way that most people will never experience. They allow you to manifest things in your life. And listen, I'm not a woo woo manifest guy, right? I'm not claiming a Lamborghini. I'm not none of that shit. But what I'm telling you is I believe in practical manifestation, which is
Yeah.
I'm going to put in the work. I'm going to speak my values into existence, and it's going to allow me to separate myself from the flock like a black sheep. I will get everybody's first look because I look different from everybody else. And when you get people's first look, your life changes. You get your boss's first look, you get your spouse's first look, you get the market's first look, your client's first look. And all of a sudden, you start moving forward at such a fast pace that what you thought was possible for your life changes. I always tell people, whatever mountain you have in front of you that you're trying to climb, the most exciting thing for you is to reach that peak.
Yeah.
But the minute you reach that peak, one of the first things you notice is there's a mountain behind that mountain that you couldn't see before.
Yeah.
And now you have to go, oh, well, I didn't know there was another mountain. I guess I need to focus over there and climb that mountain. And when you get to the peak of that mountain, you go, oh, there's another mountain behind that mountain. I've been blown away what I thought in the personal development space and what's possible and how much people pay for certain things. When I first started, I was like, what? No. And then you get to the top of that mountain and you go, holy shit, there's another mountain back there that's twice as high. And so I'm going to go climb that mountain. And before you know it, your impact, your focus, what you get out of life, that sense of fulfillment is 10x'd from what you thought was possible because you did the work, because you were really honest with yourself as to what your non-negotiables were, and you started to contribute through those values. And when you did that, authenticity resonates at a different frequency.
Yeah.
We see so much lack of authenticity in the world, whether it's social media or it's at work or whatever it might be, that when you experience real authenticity, you feel a sense of connection that is so much more powerful than what we experience on a daily basis. And it's why we remember certain things, and it's why you can't get them out of your head. And so the goal for us is to live that authentic life so that you're getting everybody's first look, and that creates and brings opportunities with it that I promise you haven't even thought possible.
Yeah, you talk about not knowing that mountain, and back in the days of yore when I was much younger and in shape and doing stuff, I got into triathlons, and it started with, oh, I'm going to run. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to try a triathlon. And then it was like, oh, I'm going to do, an Olympics distance. And then I'm going to do a hat. Like you just keep going along for me, it was the mountain was, what's that next threshold that you could push yourself through to achieve? And as you were talking, not understanding like ourselves in terms of like maybe we don't know who we are. Maybe we have maybe a misinterpretation. We haven't met the authentic me. Me being whoever is listening in. The question, the follow up I have to that is, I feel like there's so many people, and you probably have way more experience with this than I do. But I see it in schools. I see it in students. I see it just in. I coach basketball and sports and all the things. We think we are our own black sheep, however we want to define that. And what we've really done, and this is my own kind of awareness, aha, over time, is like we haven't really. We've just kind of found a similar hue of a black sheep, maybe it's a gray sheep. I don't even know if that's even a thing. And
there are, yeah.
I'm going to tell people that I'm me. I'm unique. This is what I have. But all I've really done is conform to another cluster that isn't, the shocking revelation, not our inner circle either. I'm sure you've seen this, I know, time and time again. How does someone go about having that awareness piece? Because I'm thinking it's so much of students I see that work so hard to be like, this is me, and they're doing everything, but it's all the kids doing the same thing to be the same. I see it in mindset with adults I work with. I see it, in the coaching arena when you're in the crowd or in the stands now as parents. Like there's countless examples. How does one start to go, maybe I'm a little misguided here?
It's a great question. This is the margin between really important and non-negotiable. Most people stop at really important. So they discover the things that are really important, but they don't push forward to figure out the difference between what's really important and what's non-negotiable. We see this all the time in our assessment, right? So anybody can go take our assessment, brantmenswar.com. You can take it, it's free. The goal when you first start is it presents you with about 80 different commonly held personal core values. And it says, you have it's timed. So you have like 2.5 minutes. You have to go through and select every single one that resonates with you. So just knee-jerk reaction. If you look and you go accountability, oh yeah, I like that. So you select it. And before you know it, you've gone through these 80 words. What we know after 2.5 years and tens of thousands of people taking this assessment is that the average person selects at least 30 values that they're telling themselves are really important. That's normal, right? So the challenge is we stop there. We don't push forward to pull and separate non-negotiable from really important. So what do I mean by that? For me, my black sheep are creativity, hope, impact, empathy, family, authenticity, right? I have 6. It's not uncommon to have one more or one less. Non-negotiable means if you asked me to do something that was going to steal someone's hope from them, the answer is no. Period. No discussion. Just no. Something that is really important has room to negotiate, right? And so the work that we do helps people separate really important from non-negotiable. What we are looking for are those 5 or 6 things that are just hard no's if anyone asks you to try to violate those things. And once you find out what those are, your life becomes so much easier because you only are navigating 5 or 6 things. You're not navigating 30 things that you told yourself are really important. And so when we push past really important to non-negotiable, then it becomes proving what you think is real is actually real. I have people all the time, as you can imagine, I speak at a ton of leadership conferences. Well, guess what? They say one of their non-negotiable values are at a leadership conference. It's leadership. And I'm like, wow, I would have never guessed that. So, my question to them is always this. Have you ever been in a meeting you didn't lead? If the answer is yes, how is that a non-negotiable? Kindness is a non-negotiable for me. Have you ever been unkind to someone? If the answer is yes, then it's not a non-negotiable. That is the hard conversation that you have to have. You have to get to that no means no under every circumstance, not just 1 or 2 circumstances. When it's no every single time, then you know that you've hit a non-negotiable. And so we use what we call the 5 whys. So, if you ask yourself why 5 times on that same question and you're still there, you're in pretty good shape. If your answer changes by the time you get to the 5th why, it's not a non-negotiable. So that's some of the work you have to do to make sure that you're pulling apart really important from non-negotiable.
Yeah, no, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, I mean, it makes so much sense that it kind of like I want to stack on Derek Sivers or Sivers. I should probably know how to pronounce his name. I followed him forever, but he's got that phrase, that hell. If you're not saying hell yes, then the answer is no. And but in order to do that, as you were talking, I was like, man, you need to know those non-negotiable. You need to know that, and maybe you do, but it's just putting that articulation to it. And I think it's something that, again, I think so many of us we know, but boy, we sure been and almost kind of like you were talking about the beginning, right, where we end up still saying yes. Because we feel guilty, we feel bad, we feel we're not really helping anybody in the long run of it as a result of
including
that
yourself.
kind of maybe yes.
And I think the interesting thing, man, is as knowing what they are and actually speaking them into existence with deliberate intention are 2 different things, right? It's that G.I. Joe, knowing is half the battle, right?
Yep.
And so you've got to speak them into existence vocally. And when you do so, it's not just for your benefit, right? It's for everybody that you interact with benefit as well. So that, trust me, the people that know me and deal with me on a regular basis know what my black sheep are, and they know how to frame something through those things if they want to get a response that they like.
Sure.
Right? If they frame something in me being able to have impact and give somebody hope and let me be creative and authentic and all those things, there's a good shot I'm going to say yes. If they ignore those things or they challenge my sheep, then they're going to have a very difficult time convincing me, and they're probably not going to like the answer they're going to get. And so that's what happens, though. The more that you speak these things into existence, you're actually helping people have better communication with you, more impactful communication with you, because they start to understand what matters most. And they're not going to waste your time or approach you with something that's going to be irritating or annoying, because they just know that it is in alignment with who you are. And so that's that real challenge after you figure it out. Are you actually speaking? Does everybody else know? Because if they don't know, what are you doing? You got to
Yeah.
let everybody else know so that they can adjust their behavior. And when that starts to happen, life becomes a much more happy place, right? Because now all of a sudden you're going, I had a really good day today. Oh, somebody asked me to do this. Somebody asked me to do that. All these things are in alignment with what matters most to me. Well, wow, wasn't that amazing when people actually know what matters to you, that they would present something to you in that light? So
Yeah.
that is one of the real benefits of speaking these things into existence, is that it impacts not just you, but everybody you come in contact
Yeah, and that is a perfect segue, because I also want to introduce the the one line that has resonated with me the most out of the entire book, and I think I end up highlighting like half that book is in my Kindle notes. But the one line that like literally got me off my couch to stop making excuses. It's what got me doing the 75 hard challenge. I don't know if you want to call it a midlife crisis, whatever you want to call it, but I was kind of just in this weird funk. I mean, I wasn't like
with. Yeah.
not productive. But I think I was just kind of like on cruise control through life, not really whatever. And the line, and it's it's like my mantra for the year, is that you don't find your purpose, you choose it. And
Yeah.
it goes perfectly with what you're talking about. You can't choose it until you know your values and your what. I mean, it's the whole essence of the book. Um, but that line like spoke to me, because I feel so much of what I was doing, I think so much of what I see online, so much of how you want to read and interpret stuff is like this wishful thinking, right? Like, oh, oh, boohoo me. Um, here's what I want, but it's the opportunities aren't presenting itself. I guess I'll just do this. And when I read that and reread it, and I still read it, it's like I have control on that narrative. And I think deep down I knew that, but for whatever reason, the lining of the stars or whatever it was, when I read that line, I'm like, do something, dude. Like,
Yeah.
get off
Yeah.
your butt. Life's
Yeah.
too short to keep hoping something's going to happen. And so then the rest of of that work just stacks up. But I think that line just really just stood out bold. And I think
Yeah.
that's the key to a lot of this work.
It's a realization, right? And so that idea that you choose it and you don't find it, we've been lied to our whole lives that purpose is something we find. And
Yeah.
again, I'm a child of the 80s, so for me, I'm immediately thinking it's Indiana Jones, and I got to
Oh
go on
yeah.
this friggin' search for this purpose, and it's dangerous, and I don't want to step on that stone, and I've got arrows coming from sidewalls, and it's like, it's the least attractive thing to think about if I have to go find something like that. It's like a scavenger hunt, right?
Right.
And especially the younger we get, the younger generations, they didn't spend a lot of time outside. Their adventurous spirit is, Baldur's Gate. It's not what we're
No. No.
used to, going outside and going on an adventure.
Yeah.
So it makes it even tougher for the younger generations to be attracted to trying to figure it out. But when you realize it's a choice, it actually allows you to stop winging it, right? And this is something that the book talks about, and I think it's an interesting story, is where the term winging it actually comes from. So, in the early 1900s, the US was experiencing this big boom, and it was the gold rush and all these things happening. And so people had time and money to spend. And so they started to build playhouses to give them something to spend their money on. But they did it at such a high clip that there were more playhouses than there were actors. And so when somebody would get sick or somebody would get hurt, actors would have to fill in at the last minute. And what they would do is they'd show up at the theater, they'd go off into the wings, off stage into the wing of the theater, and they would be trying to quickly memorize their lines before they stepped onto stage.
Mm.
And that's where the term winging it comes from. It was designed in a moment of frantic emergency to have to try to memorize something so that you could wing it. You could wing that role. we fast forward, 100+ years, we've adopted it as a way of life. It's not designed for that. It's designed for an emergency. Yet we've decided we're just going to live our lives this way. I'm just going to wing it,
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's amazing to me is how many people think they suck at winging it. I'm like, you have no idea how adept you are at winging it. You might not think so, but you're alive and you're not dead, which
Right.
means you're pretty good at winging it, right?
Yeah.
And so when you understand that there's another choice, that you don't have to wing it, that you don't have to frantically sit on the sidelines of your life and memorize things just before you have to make a decision, and you can start to live with deliberate intention, you can start to actually focus your decisions through your non-negotiables, man, that's when life starts to change. And when you see that and you go, well, how do I choose my purpose? It is impossible to choose your purpose without knowing what your values are. It's impossible because your what, which is your values, and your why, which is your purpose, have to be in alignment. They have to be together. They're tied together. So what does that look like? I told you already, mine are creativity, hope, impact, empathy, family, authenticity. What's my purpose? To creatively impact others by authentically providing hope. Whoa, that sounds familiar. Hell yeah, it sounds familiar. It's got all my sheep in it. My what and my why are in alignment. And when those two things are in alignment, the how, which is our mission in life, right? We don't need to religify that. It's literally just however you're going to choose to honor what matters most to you. Becomes incredibly easy and really powerful because there's alignment between what and why. If there's no alignment, if I just have a purpose that doesn't include any of my non-negotiables, man, then living it out, that mission becomes chaos because you are only going to achieve things by luck or accident.
Yep.
Those are two things that I don't want to rely on for the wellness of myself or my family. I'm not going to do that. I have to live with deliberate intention, which means I have to define my values, my what, so I can choose my why. And once those two things are aligned, look out, because now I have that power and purpose behind me to be able to live it out in any way I see fit. And that is a really, really powerful place to live your life from.
Yeah. And it's such a mind warp of a flip of everything that I've ever been taught, intentionally or unintentionally, where we spin our wheels forever and a day trying to
Yeah.
establish the why before we get to the what. And when I read your book, I was like, duh. And I think about education and how long we spend articulating the why and the perfect mission statement and the perfect vision statement that no one can recite in any district.
That's right.
We don't know the what behind it. I mean, we all have our own. And so it's just to me that's just such an awesome another revelation as I was reading through your work. It's like, yeah, I've been spending forever wishing or hoping my life's destiny is going to show itself as I'm trying to figure out what my why is. But I haven't spent any time really looking at myself to figure out those values. And so it's just been really, really great insight. I want to be respectful of time, and I don't want to just completely rehash the whole book because people can just go get the book and read it, which they all absolutely should, and pay attention to any of your platforms. But I am curious. The book's been out now. I mean, I'm just coming across it several years later. You've got your programs. You're doing speaking. You're doing all those things. What has maybe either amplified in the message behind the book, or has there been things that have shifted or additions, as you continue and more people come across it and you're sharing it and talking, and you're probably getting people like me that are like, yes, and then others who maybe counter it, things evolve. And so, what has that been for you as you're wrapping your head around? I think that's just such a fascinating concept of you've put something out like a book where it is somewhat static, right? Like it's published. Here it is. I know we can always do additions and updates, but there it is. But then life continues, and things have happened. So how has that been for you in that space? Rewarding, frustrating, new aha shifts. I mean, I'll let you embrace it however you want to tackle that.
So it's led to some pretty amazing opportunities, right? And so uh, when you have creativity as one of your sheep, you sort of live and die by that too. So what it's sort of allowed and what we are doing right now and what it's sort of birthed are several things. We have a lifestyle brand that's about to launch called Black Sheep Originals, which is about encouraging people to discover who they are and then to live out their life by that mantra. And so you're going to start to see, this Black Sheep Originals company bring forth, apparel, t-shirts, hats, hoodies, that sort of thing that all have these sort of statements on them, which says you don't find yourself, you make yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the mantra. And so it's a reminder to people that even what shirt they put on or what hoodie they choose to wear that day is a choice, and it should be a reflection of who you are. And so that's we're coming out with a journal this year that's an accompaniment to the book. And that's we haven't even announced that, so here you go,
Hey,
the
boom.
exclusive. It's going to be called Burn with Purpose,
Ooh.
based on a quote from a satirist from the 50s, that Glasgow was his name. And it says that success is not the result of spontaneous combustion. You must set yourself on fire. And so the book is designed, the journal is designed to help you figure out if your black sheep are real. And it goes deep into 10 different areas that you will fill out, and everything from, core values and that sort of thing to your favorites to, hopes and aspirations to things that piss you off, like all these different things to give you a really good understanding of who you are. And then when you're done filling that out, you burn it. You light it on fire, you burn that thing, and you set yourself free from all of this stuff that you think you are, and allow yourself to be who you were intended to be, right?
Alive.
So that journal should be out by the end of the year. We've got a children's book coming out by the end of the year called Color Outside the Lines, that is all about discovering who you really are and being your unique self. Our goal is to touch every generation, right? So we're going to have that toddler, we're going to have Gen Z, Gen X, we've got boomers, we've got millennials, we've got everybody there in between, with different products that we have, which is, again, all in support of us trying to help 500,000 people discover what really matters to them. We just feel that if we can do that, then we start to find bridges that we can build to connect to each other, and we stop focusing on what separates us all, and we start focusing on what we share together. And that's the type of world that I want to live in. And so that's what we're trying to foster and build, right? And if we can focus on the things that we share, then that allows for us to have some really difficult conversations, even if we feel like there are different ways to get there. If we can agree that we want the same thing, then it leads to a lot more grace, which I think is needed. And so that's sort of what we are doing on that front. So between the journal and the kids book and the apparel, the lifestyle brand, and then we're in the midst of pitching a television show is sort of Queer Eye meets Fixer Upper. And so it's a combination targeted to Gen Z to help battle this loneliness epidemic that is just crushing them at the moment. And can we teach them how to connect with themselves, connect with their community, and then how do you live these values out even to the space that you live in? Your living room should be a reflection of these values. People should be able to know something about you without you ever saying a word. And so that's sort of in development right now as well. So yeah, that's what happens when you write a book that gets translated into a bunch of languages, and you have to figure out what's next, right? And so it's super exciting, but it's got to be focused energy, or it just sort of all fizzles out in every direction and nothing happens anywhere. So we are working really hard to focus the energy in a linear path, right? So that one thing happens and just begets the next and the next and the next. So you'll start to see all these things trickle out over the next 6 months. And we're just super excited for what's in store.
Well, damn, man, that is right there. I think that's called a mic drop. So that's awesome, man. Kudos to you for that, and congratulations. Man, I wish you all the best. And I know I will be signing up for all those things. So that is, I mean, I think a perfect testament to the words that you put into your book and the message that you speak, and then to be turning around and living by the exact same thing, because we all know um, there's lots of great messages out there, but not everybody truly lives the message. And you're a perfect example of what happens when we live by the words that we try to help guide others with. And so
Well, I would say
it's amazing.
I'm a messy example, brother, is what I am.
Well, so
I'm
you're
a
human.
messy
You're
example.
human. You're human. I mean,
Yes, trying.
it wouldn't be
Yeah,
authentic or real if it wasn't messy. If it was clean
that's the
cut and
truth.
perfect, then maybe that's
That's
the we don't quite know ourselves yet, right? So I think
that's the truth.
there's always some unpacking and unlayering that has to come with any of that work. You
Yes.
know, as we wrap up, I want to be you want to be respectful of your time, because I could get really nerd out and just talk to you forever. And I know you've clearly got a few things going on. You know, I wanna wrap up with question I've been asking people, and it started off. It's kind of shifted as I've kind of kicked off this new season as a rant or rave, and then I'm kind of like, well, I don't really want to rant. Um, so I'm going to ask you for a rave, and this can be on anything, something that maybe we didn't come across in this, we didn't talk about in this content that you want to make sure you get out.
Yeah.
But it can also just be like back to this kind of this human side of the guest of the show. So maybe it's, I mean, an awesome book. Obviously, we're talking Black Sheep, but it'd be something you come
Yeah.
across, TV show, anything that you want to just kind of rave about. That's pretty awesome to kind of end the show here on a positive twist.
Well, I think what I would say is this. I've been trying, to get my brain to shut off is a difficult thing. And so, we try to watch these television shows, whether it's, Yellowstone or it's Tulsa King, or we're watching Griselda right now on
Oh
Netflix,
yeah,
right? Um, and it's just amazing to me how what we are sucked into as a society, um, as a narrative, as a
yeah,
story,
yeah.
um, is pretty just freaking nuts. I mean, when you look at the stuff that we watch, and it's like, I don't know if we're just going, well, thank God my life isn't that effed up, and so I'm watching it to be able to try to find
Yeah.
some hope that my life isn't that bad. But what I'm starting to realize is if you sort of think of your own life as your own TV show, you control that narrative and the impact that that show is going to have. So I don't care if I'm sitting down at Waffle House, eating All American with with the waitress there. I'm engaging in conversation. I'm taking opportunities to have meaningful discussion with people. And what I've been blown away with is how much they desire it, how
Yes.
much they love it, how much they just are waiting for that one person to ask them something of substance so that they can give their opinion. Um, I would watch that show over and over and over again because I'm watching it just absolutely transform people in a moment, right?
Yeah.
You have an opportunity to impact everybody you come in contact with in that moment. Stop being so self-absorbed, stop worrying about what you're doing next, and live in that present for just a second, just long enough to make a meaningful connection. And I promise you, you're going to go to bed that night going, this was a good day. This
Yeah.
was a really good day. And I feel like I'm in alignment with why I'm here on this planet. And I know that I'm going to have that opportunity to impact somebody else again tomorrow. And you just need to take the opportunity.
Yeah.
That's what I've been trying to do is just my life is a TV show at the moment. And it's like, you know what? I just want it to have that positive impact on everyone that decides they want to be a part of it. And so
Yeah.
that's what I'm focused on. And I wish other people would do the same. You don't have to watch these crazy shows that are just insane storylines where people, I tried to watch Succession and I just hated everybody on that show.
Oh
I
yeah.
hate every
Yeah.
character.
Yeah.
And I just, after 3 or 4 episodes, I'm like, I don't know that I can stomach that. I'm out. I'm
Yeah.
out. I want us to start putting positive stuff into the world that people go, you know what? I'd rather be a part of that show than that shit show over there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so take your opportunity to really put out that positive impact in your own narrative and your own story and watch how many people want to be a part of your show.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're really onto something there, where we watch that stuff too. convince ourselves that what we're doing isn't so bad, even though we're not as happy as we want to be. I
Right.
was a Succession junkie. I jumped on late as all the hoorah on the last season, and I was the same way. Like I hated every single person, and I just kept watching it. Like, well, I'm glad I don't work for a company like that. I'm glad I'm not a jerkwad
Yes.
like that. And then I'm like,
That's right.
but then I was,
That's
you know,
right.
now I'm thinking at it like, gosh, but but who am I? Yeah, so
Right.
yeah, you're spot on, and you're so right. Like, and we'll wrap this up with where people can find you. But at our post office, I mean, take a perfect example of being in the moment. Post office, they're short staffed like everybody in this day and age. People have no patience or threshold for anybody or anything anymore. But in the post office, like these two ladies are just doing everything they can. And people are just jerks, flat out just jerks and unappreciative. And a couple, probably a year ago, it just broke the mold one day and just started idle conversation with one of them, and she just lit up and started glowing. Now when
Yeah.
I go in and drop stuff off, like she knows me, she sees me, and you can tell people are just like, and it's just like now we've got this kind of mutual exchange where like we know we're gonna have. I'm not gonna go details of all life things, but it's more than just like, hey, how's your day? I need this stuff. It's like we talk about whatever going on, and it's such a wonderful 2-minute blip in the day that now has transcended now over a year when I go in and drop stuff off or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And it's like all it took was just like you said, asking a
Yeah.
question that's authentic. And I think,
Listen.
and it's a win-win for everybody. I win,
It
she
is.
wins, and we move on.
Yes.
And it doesn't require anything extra out of my life
No.
except for like,
Listen,
I feel better.
You don't need to go up to a stranger and say, tell me what you think about Jesus, right? Like that's not the level that we're looking for here. But you can say, gosh, I love your tattoo. Tell me that story, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, but take some interest in somebody else and ask them for an explanation and watch what happens. I mean, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Man, this has been so good. I can't thank you enough. This is, what a wonderful start to my week to have this conversation with you. I truly am honored to be able to speak to you. Your work has drastically impacted me and my mindset to where I'm at and where I'm planning to go and the work that I'm doing on myself. So I can't thank you enough for that. And I wish you the best in all the endeavors you've got going on. And I'll get links in the show notes to everything. But I always like to say if someone is at a red light and they're listening in, they do want to jump on and start to follow along with what you've got going on. Where are some of the best places for them to learn more about you and your work?
Well, first, let me say thank you so much for the opportunity to talk, right? To chat, to connect. It means everything to me. And so thank you for that. I think you're doing incredible work. I think you're doing really impactful work, and don't discount the fact that you live a lot of your life in comic books, because there's a whole group of people out there, including myself, that love that life. And continue with that. My only ask for you is that you continue to pass it on, right?
Yeah.
Figure out this stuff, encourage and challenge other people to do the same. If you don't, nobody will. So,
Right.
Carry that black sheep message as much as you can. If anyone wants to follow me on social media, every place is simply at Brant Menswar, BrantMenswar, on every platform known to man. You can find me there and, connect, reach out. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. I encourage you to grab the book if you haven't read it. Listen to the audiobook. If you're into audiobooks, it's took 6 months to create, and it's a 2.5 hour sort of audio movie. We scored the whole thing like a movie. It's a pretty incredible experience. So if you're not into reading like me, you listen to everything. And so take that audiobook experience. But just thank you so much for the opportunity to share, and wishing everybody the courage to discover a little bit more about themselves.
Man, I love it. Thank you so much for what you do, and keep up all the awesome work, and help people to find themselves and to celebrate their black sheep. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
Chaos. Woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, chilling with coffee mugs, me and coffee chugs, talking education all across the nation, pushing boundaries, thinking innovation. Chaos.